Alright, so we're back with the Martin neck reset, and we're going to start with getting the saddle cut. So, because now we have that neck reset ready, and so now we need to recut the saddle to a new height, and let's get that going. So first off, we got to get this thin enough to fit in that slot, and also cut it down, because it is way too long. So we're going to take and measure this for length first. And get that marked out. And I'll end up cutting it just a little long for now, and then I'll finish the final fitting when we get there. I gotta cut it to length. Okay, so now I got the final to width and thickness. So now this drops right in, nice and tight. No wiggle at all, which is exactly what we're looking for. Now we're gonna set the height. And so for me, I actually use a very low-tech tool. So this is basically just gives me an offset. So the bottom of this will be the plane of the fingerboard, fretboard, and then this will tell me how much up on the deal to make a mark, and that should give me a really close mark to how tall my saddle should be. Should be very close. So I have a high E and low E. So we're going to start with the high E. So I got this down against the fretboard. Extend that out. Now I can just take a pencil, make a mark at the bottom of that notch right there where the high E would go. Same thing, take the low E, make a mark there, and it seems a little high, but it usually does. Okay, so there's my marks. Come on, there's my marks. Now we're going to set the arc. So now we're going to take and get the radius of the fretboard, and I already checked this one over, and this is actually a 20 inch radius. So nice and flat like that. Anyway, so this is now the curvature, and this matches the fret and everything. So that's the curvature we want this saddle. So I'm going to set this on here. Set the gauge on there. Those two marks I made. Give me my arc. And now there's my line. So now we're going to sand this. So now we got that cut down. And so now we're off to make the intonation. So we're going to intonate this saddle. Alright, we'll show you that. So what we're going to do now is mark where the strings go over. At least a couple of them. This is the way I do it. And I just use a fairly standard intonation, shape for the saddle. So the low E is going to be all the way to the back. And then the G is all the way forward. And you're just basically just kind of draw a diagonal across the saddle between those two. So these two are just kind of in the middle. The B comes all the way back. The high E is all the way forward. And that's going to be how we set the intonation. So now let's file this out. So I'm going to use my little vise here. I like using this a lot. And we're going to take and set this. So now we're going to file the B and the low E first. So I have these saddle files. I got these from StewMac, and I really like the way these work for this. They're a really good width. So I'm just going to I'm just kind of resting it against this thumb because there's no teeth on this side. Just kind of rest against my thumb right there. just so it kind of holds still as I get this going. Stop and check it. Make sure I'm getting, see where I'm at. I should be very close. Yep, looking pretty good. Just like that. Okay, so we want to leave a little bit of that top, but now this is beveled most of the way back. So now we're going to take and bevel this end. And so how I normally do this is I just kind of start at that end, file a little bit, and then just slowly work my way forward. And then as you keep filing, of course, this is gets filed a little bit more, so it goes further back. Because that's what we're looking for. We want just kind of a nice straight line between the front of the, the front part of the saddle here at the D and the back where the low E is. Clear that off, see where we're at. So I can go a little bit more on the low E side. Feather that some more. There we go, just like that. Now we're going to flip that around, move that over as well. Now I'm going to take same thing here, use my thumb to make sure I don't go any further than I actually want to. And this side we're just going to feather all the way back to the front of the saddle, because this is the high E. Okay, a little bit more. There we go. Okay, now we're going to set this low part. And same thing here, going to use my thumb to help to hold that in place, just so it doesn't wander too much. And there, so you can kind of see I've cut one side deeper than the other, and that's so now I have this lip. When I file, I'll come back and hit this lip rather than going past it. Still want to be careful for a minute until I get this feathered in. Something like that. Then we run just a little bit over that low E, just so I don't have a real sharp edge here. Same thing with the B. I'm going to take and just very lightly go across that a couple times, just so I don't have a sharp edge. I just want to roll that corner off. Because on acoustic saddles, I normally don't cut a string notch or string slot for the saddles. The strings kind of do that on their own, so especially in bone. Okay, so there is the intonation cut, as you can kind of see there. Now we're going to take and sand this and buff it out. Okay, so for the top edge, I normally just get a cork sanding block like this, and then just sand these smooth. And this is 600 grit, so not very coarse. It's pretty fine. Because I don't really want to change the shape. I just want to take off all the sanding marks. And round these corners just a little bit. Come across that B. Kind of smooth up this high E area. Okay, so now I'm just sanding the sides of this, smooth those up, just again on that 600 grit. And yes, because I'll have questions, I took out a knuckle. This has got a big cut across this knuckle, and I got a cut across my pinky there, from two different things, 2 different days. But I just seem to have a really good luck of you know, banging up my fingers lately. Okay, that's feeling pretty good. Looks pretty good. Just get everything smoothed up. Okay, do the same thing with 1000 grit, and then we're gonna go buff it. Okay, so send that on the 1000. Now we're gonna buff it real quick. Just take this. We're just gonna. Now you can see how shiny that gets. I really like the way this looks when you buff these all out. Okay, let's go to the finer grit. Okay. There we go. Nice and shiny. Let's get that in the guitar, put some strings on it, and see how it looks. Gonna speed this up and let's just throw some strings on. Okay, we're going to tune this up real quick. Okay, so now that we have this in, I'm going to move you around here so you can see this. Now that the new saddle is in, the action is just slightly high. I do need to go back and fix this. But I do want to, before I do that though, I want to let this sit overnight. At least, if not a day. And that's just because this neck still may move up just a little bit. So to cutting this down twice, you might as well just let it do once. So, hang on, and I think I will just wait and post this after that so that we show the full setup. So hang on, we'll see you in 24 hours. Alright, so now this is sat for 2 days, letting everything get used to where it is. And now we're going to do the final height on the saddle. So the curvature is right, the intonation actually is not bad once I check it, but the strings are just a little high. So what we're going to do, we're going to measure this, and then we're going to drop the saddle accordingly, and this should be pretty well done. The nut looks great, the frets look great, so here we go. So we need to come down about Okay, here we go. So I'm gonna loosen this down real quick. So just take my winder. Now here's a quick tip if you're doing stuff like this. You can just take a capo, set it right there. Now you can just pop these pins out and just take out the saddle. So my cutters, which are not where they're supposed to be, find a set. So let's move you up here. So what we're going to do now, see now that the string tension's off, you just pop this off like that. Pull these strings out. Now you just lift the saddle out. Okay. Now I'm just going to mark this and cut this down a little bit. Okay, so here it is back in. Got that drop down. Now I will say this is a little lower than I would normally like. I'd normally like a little more saddle in there when I got done with the neck reset. But for whatever reason, either this top moved up more than I planned on once I had string tension, or the neck moved a little forward, more flexible than I thought it was. This does happen occasionally. So it's not unheard of by any stretch. So you can take and put these back in. Okay, now let's string it back up. Let's try to bring it back up to tune. Okay, now we're going to tune this guy real quick. Okay. Double check this action one more time. Yeah, right where we want it. Okay. So now, this guitar is ready to go. I'll be calling the customer here and let him know everything is good. So I checked the nut slots here. The nut slots, actually the strings are just right now that action is down low, so I don't need to file any of those. The frets are in great shape. Check down through those, and there we are. Okay, so this one ended up not needing that much setup work, so I am going to go through and do another one that is just a full setup. Just because it will be better to start one with it's got more things to actually fix. Since this one, like I said, was pretty well in shape, ready to go, I didn't really need to do much of a setup other than just change out that saddle. Everything else was in great shape. So I am going to do a different one where we have to do more fretwork, stuff like that. And I've got a couple to work on to do that. So you'll see on the next video, we'll do a guitar setup, acoustic. And I think I've got another one I will find for doing an electric one after that. So stay tuned for those ones. And we will see you on the next one.